everybody, and welcome back. Today we have on the channel Alexander, and he loves Alexander, but he also likes efficiency. So he eventually is going to go by Alex throughout the program this evening, right? So Alex actually runs a Monad stake pool, and it's currently at a 0% fee until they reach 5 million ADA worth of stake. And so if you don't have a pool, if you're not delegating to MUSE already, then you might consider delegating to Alexander's pool.
Delegate to MUSE. He's a much cooler guy than me. So.
No. All right, Alex, the very first question that everybody has to know.
Okay.
What microphone and what headphones are you using right now?
This is a Rode PodMic, and I won't say that Charles stole it from me, but I did notice that he switched over recently, so he might have caught a glimpse of my 200 subscriber YouTube channel and been like, damn, I got to have that. So it's a Rode PodMic, and these are Hyphaman Sundara planar magnetic headphones.
All right, for those of you at home who do not know about planar magnetic headphones, this is some serious stuff, okay? That's all I'm going to say about it. Go Google to your heart's content. They operate differently than a cone, okay? They're extremely sensitive. They're very, very high-quality headphones. So I'm just saying.
Yeah, beautiful
I'm just saying, for enjoying hi-fi audio, they are exquisite. And also, you notice they are open back as well. So you get a really natural sound.
Do they get picked up in the microphone? Actually, that's a downside of doing interviews with open back headphones versus
it's a little bit. It's okay. I use these for my interviews too, so we're good. Fantastic. All right, so let's jump right in. Alexander, you actually have created, and I'm gonna say this, and now correct me if I'm incorrect.
You go for it.
All right, here we go. So, Alexander, you have taken the concept of an NFT. And what most people at home, if you've heard of the term NFT, most of you probably assume it's a JPEG that somebody minted on the blockchain and now they're going to sell it for $69 million like Beeple, right? And for those of you who take a minute and just dig down a little bit, really at the core functionality, an NFT really is going to be representing either digital scarcity or ownership of either a physical or a digital good on the blockchain. That's powerful. So eventually, one day, you'll be able to buy a house via smart contract and NFT. I personally really, really hope in the next 3 years that the government, and we will have a court case where the judge rules in favor of a smart contract and saying that it's legally binding. I think that's going to happen much quicker than slowly, I would imagine. But Alexander, you've taken this concept of we've created this JPEG on our own, and now we're going to mint it. But now you've actually taken this, I would say, not just one step further, but like 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 steps further. And you've said, oh, you're welcome. You've said, you know what? Let's generate our own JPEG NFT via code and without human interaction, but let's let the blockchain determine what this JPEG NFT is going to end up looking like, correct? Is that the most simplified version of what this is?
Basically, I mean, there's some minor niggles, and if I was a different person, I might start nine, slapping Ryan around. But I mean, you got it in principle. What we're trying to do is basically take or imagine what does a blockchain native art look like, rather than art on a blockchain. Does that make sense, right?
Most certainly.
You can come up with a better musical analogy, right? But what does like electronic music sound like rather than using electronic instruments to recreate other classical kinds of music, right? Like it eventually becomes its own genre unto itself and has its own quirks and possibilities. So, 808s get their own kind of flavor and feel and use, right? Rather than just being used as a drum machine, right?
I absolutely love it, and so what I'm gathering is that, and one other thing for those of you online, you might be wondering, okay, well, let's say currently the way it stands, at least for Cardano, if we mint an NFT and it's particularly a JPEG. The JPEG itself is actually not stored on the blockchain because that's inefficient for space. So right now, what's going on is it's actually querying a location on the internet. What is it? Interplanetary File Storage
IPFS,
System.
Yeah, or Arweave, right? But they're basically like a blockchain version of Google Drive or Dropbox, right? That's not run by a single company.
Exactly.
But yeah, you throw your image up on there. And then all that's on Cardano is a little like URL link that says, go here to find it. So it's much more like the deed to a house, like you were saying, right? It's basically a pointer to something. When you buy an NFT on Cardano as it exists today, you're buying a reference. It says, hey, that thing over there, that's mine, right? And what we're doing
is so powerful.
Yeah. What we're doing is we're actually saying, we're putting the house on the chain in a way, right? And saying, I'm just going to stick with music the rest of the night, even though I don't know what I'm talking about. Like, it's essentially a piece of sheet music that is actually written onto the Cardano blockchain. And then because smart contracts aren't live yet, it is incumbent on the end user to execute that sheet music someplace, right? Whether that's on their local machine, we'll have some tutorials on how to do that, or in an online cloud browser, right? Right now, it's not an orchestra, it's just a sheet music. But there is this kind of idea, like, where does Beethoven's, symphony reside? Is it in the sheet music, or is it in the Philharmonic that's playing it? Probably more in the sheet music, right? This abstract notion of what the thing is, rather than any one performance of it.
So I just want to stop you right there, because that to me just blew my mind a little bit, in the most wonderful sense of. So what you're essentially saying is that you create the art, and the art lives, at least the bones and the foundation, the skeleton of the art lives on chain, and then it's up to the end user to give it life and bring it in, birth it into the real world via a medium of their choice at their destination or location, whether that be a physical manifestation in a physical space or on a web browser of their choice, etc. Is that correct?
I think you got it. I'll add. Sorry, I'm getting something in my throat.
You're good.
The one thing I'll add is some people have asked, like, well, why do you have an IPFS link in your metadata, right? And the reason for that is because, as much as I have this abstract notion of what I'm trying to do in this project, I recognize that there is a pre-existing ecosystem around NFTs and Cardano, right? So like Pool PM's viewer, some of this other stuff. So we do include an IPFS link to a output of the image at like 4K resolution, right? But don't confuse. I think there's like a Zen Buddhist saying, like, when you point at the moon, don't confuse your finger for the moon, something like that, right? Like, like, right.
I love it.
We have an image there that is to kind of plug into the existing ecosystem and to make it easier for people who aren't inclined to kind of execute it themselves. But it's kind of like the difference between open source software and closed source software, right? In a closed source software, you get a binary that you can run, and you can open Photoshop on your computer, but you can't see how it's made. And if that binary gets lost, you can't recreate it. For us, we're basically using the chain as kind of like a mini GitHub repo that anyone in the future can recreate this thing. And even if the IPFS link goes dead, it's hypothetically, if your Spacebud, if something were to happen and IPFS was to be taken offline, like, that thing is gone, right? Like, it's never coming back. But as long as a single copy of the Cardano blockchain exists somewhere in the world, the unsigned algorithms that we've minted will be able to come back. Like, the DNA is there.
Okay, so I want to point out two things. Okay, the first one is, I want to go back to what you just said. So you stated that in case someone else doesn't want to show this NFT on their own, we've already provided a place for people to go and view it. Now, a real world use case that I see right off the bat is, for example, if I have, and this is going to get into the world of digital art, but let's just say, for example, I have a really, really high-end projector or a really high-end television or whatever, and I bought one of these NFTs. I could then project this in my art gallery. I could put this on my television and have it as high resolution that it can potentially be. I would imagine it's probably a vector, right? But the rest of the world can also enjoy this same art by just going to, like we said, and now you mentioned something called pool.pm. For those of you at home that don't know this, pool.pm actually has it built in to where you can view native tokens and their associated potential JPEGs associated with that token, right? So that's a tool that you can go and use yourself. But for as far as a real world use case, is that something that speaks to you? Is that something that you're envisioning as well?
So in the end, I am outputting, because of the way that we're generating them, they are outputting a bitmap image, but it is kind of very similar to the concept of vector representations, because the whole project, which has something like 30,000 unique images in it, is generated by something like 68 lines of code, 13 of which are comments and like 8 of which are empty carriage returns, right? And I guess I get what's the point there is that it sounds like you know what an SVG file is, or an Illustrator file versus a
Correct.
Photoshop file, right?
Yeah.
A vector is a much more efficient representation than a bitmap, because you don't have to store the individual pixel values for each different thing, right, in an array. But we basically kind of have like a vector representation, which is even like a layer down from vector, which is like the basic mathematical operations to produce this stuff. And then in the end, we output a PNG, because for printing purposes or for display purposes, the way that we're doing it, it's difficult to represent it using linear gradients, even though these things a lot of them look like they have gradients in them. They do have this kind of compositing effect that is not really easily representable in an SVG or
no, that makes perfect sense. And now one other point that I want to make that you mentioned. For those of you at home, you might have heard, if you know the Winklevoss twins, that's just a big name. One of the other projects they're touting, Sans Ethereum, is like Filecoin, right? That's one of their babies. And that is in the world of decentralized file storage solutions. And to me, by you referencing and by saying the DNA is going to live on the ADA blockchain or Cardano blockchain in perpetuity, this is like a pseudo storage solution that you're actually building on the chain. Is that an okay assumption, correlation?
Yeah, I would say that we're the one nuance to that is we've basically worked within the constraints of a blockchain to figure out how do we generate, visually interesting, aesthetically pleasing experiences within this very tight space of like, it's like I said, it's 68 lines of code, and it's, people who aren't programmers might think like, why would I pay a bunch of money for something that's so short, right? But if you've ever studied something like physics or slept through a physics course, like there's an elegance to simplicity and reducing something to its core. And so actually a lot of work went into this is what we want to do. How do we kind of reduce it down and distill it into its essential core parts? And, I think this is like the 83rd iteration of unsigned algorithms that I was working on, releasing on my computer at home that has the right balance of complexity and conciseness and all these different things so that I feel comfortable putting it out there. And like, I might not be embarrassed in 5 years when I look back at this, which is important for me. Right.
Hey, no, I think what you're doing is really cool. So break it down real fast for those at home. Now you mentioned, right? It's you said X iteration of what you're doing at this point. So that to me says, all right, this is a collection of works that you have generated. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And from what I've gathered in my minuscule, now everybody at home knows I'm not a coder. I am a musician. I count to 4 on a daily basis. If you think
this is the best conversation I've had about this, man. No disrespect to anyone else I've talked about it, but you're really, I think, opening it up to a larger audience. I really appreciate what you're doing, Ryan.
No. You're good, man. Well, so I count to 4. I don't count above that because if it's in 6/8, I can subdivide in a macro 2 or a 3. Okay, so. When I was doing this research on here, everybody at home, you know that if you work with colors, you have your RGB color spectrum, right? So you have every color can be derived from a mixture of red, green, and blue on the spectrum. And that can range from 0 and with yours to 255, right? Yep. So, and basically, from what I gathered, is when you are generating these art pieces, and I am going to call them art because I do think they're fantastic. No, you're welcome. You are essentially, the algorithm it's creating these supposed random combinations of red, greens, and blues.
Mhm.
And then it's also, and that's per pixel, right? And
Mhm.
then it's also generating, potentially rotating the pixels. And then, I don't know exactly the rotational aspect,
Yeah.
but essentially it's randomizing color selection and randomizing rotation and then orientation. Is that correct?
So yeah. So the one again, you deserve a cookie, man. You're getting so much of this right.
Hey, I have wine, so I'm good. We're good.
I woke up early. I'm drinking coffee, cold brew, but
that works too.
The thing that's different is that for me, it was important to kind of release this collection. And as much as I love like randomized artwork, to me, that wasn't really like complete. So when I talked about this balancing and this struggle of trying to make it all fit and have it be complex, what I'm talking about is I wanted there to be like every valid combination of these inputs that there could be. So rather than setting all these different things and just randomly picking 10,000 of them, to me that felt like if there's more than 10,000 and I randomly pick 10,000, it adds this question like, well, why did I pick those 10,000? And some people have kind of come at me online like, this is a cash grab. Why are you releasing 31,000 NFTs? And I hope I addressed that, because to me, I wanted this thing to be released in its entirety, right? And there's some interesting things we can talk about, what I hope people will do with them, why I think it's good to have all of them in there and not just some of them, because there's this idea of composing things together and whatnot.
Well, I just want to stop you real fast. In reference to that, I just want to clarify for those people that are watching this. In my brain, I go back to like stats and probability, and so I look at, when I see this, I go, there are X amount of combinations that can be derived from what you have to work with. And so what I'm hearing is you chose to go ahead and create all of the possibilities possible through this minting process. Is that correct? Yeah.
Yeah. How can I say? There's this divergence and then convergence that we do, right? Where we're like kind of brainstorming and we're generating all these ideas, and then we kind of reduce down, and that's maybe what we'll call the distilling process. I don't know if you're a whiskey guy or whatever. I'm kind of.
Yes.
Are you able to see my screen, by the way? I'm not going through the whole presentation, but I do have this the kind of part of it up. If you take all of the combinations that are possible, you end up with 50,063,860 combinations, right?
You know what? Before I came to crypto, I would have thought that was a very large number, but now we deal with market caps in the billions.
Right, whatever, right? Yeah, I don't even mind. I can't be bothered by anything less than 50 mil.
Right.
But, so that's in the kind of generative mode. Then there's all these set of rules, which we say, you could make all these, but a lot of those end up to be garbage or trash or repetitive, right? So there's this distilling process we go through, which is kind of like boiling off the maybe unnecessary or repetitive things. So that the simplest thing I can say is like rotational symmetry does not exist in this collection, right? So if you buy, let me just
that makes perfect sense,
right?
Yeah, most certainly.
This NFT is 26,603. In an earlier version of the collection, there was a version of this that looked exactly the same, except it was rotated 90 degrees. And then another 90 degrees, 180 degrees, and then another 270 degrees kind of thing. But while I liked that initially, because it allowed you to kind of arrange them in this kind of mandala, kind of growing out type central pattern, I made a sacrifice to not include rotational symmetry, because that basically gives me, instead of having 4 NFTs that are pretty similar in the collection, I can then introduce more complexity that allows me to create like more different varieties of color combinations or more kind of varied geometries. And so that was a sacrifice I was willing to make in the collection too, I'm giving up rotational symmetry. And also I felt like maybe it makes every piece more unique if there's not 3 others that are exactly like it, right?
Yeah, most certainly.
Filtering out those combinations. And it allows me to have more kind of budget to use on color hues or different kinds of things like that. So that specific step allowed me to not just, or it allowed me to introduce half color steps. So you were talking about RGB, right? Like the red, green, and blue.
Correct.
If we go into the gallery over here, we can just see the building blocks by ID. The first building blocks are these super simple gradients, right? The whole collection is generated by these basically. And
that's fantastic.
Right. And so if you're just in this to flip it, right? These things represent like the core components, and they're kind of visually uninteresting, perhaps. But without these, the rest of the collection can't exist. And so
they're the DNA.
Like, the Gattaca, right? These things that repeat throughout the sequence of the rest of the thing. And so here you kind of get them in their unadulterated form, which I think is kind of interesting, right? And so if you're a collector and you're just going for that, you can get, the first 9 of these look like the purest form of just this is what I mean by half step. Do you see these kind of faded out colors? So
most certainly.
When you composite these into the others, you get these kind of pink hues or these intermediate hues, right? When they start to get mixed. And that to me was more interesting than rotational symmetry, because I think of this as kind of like a algorithmic broad color study, right? Of all these different combinations and something
Alex,
like that.
I want to exactly what you just used the word study. Now, in my brain, when I look at this, I go, this is a wonderful exercise in potential. It's a wonderful exercise in what you can do with, like you said, 68, I think, lines of code. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Now, in my brain, I look at this and I go, all right, you're obviously a smart, intelligent individual. To me, this looks like the first step in a much larger scope of something that you're going to end up creating. Is this what so you did this, I feel, and I have not asked you this is completely me just pontificating and thinking aloud. I look at this and I go, all right,
so far I'd be surprised if you're wrong.
Well, I look at this and I go, okay, this is not, it's not extremely creative and wonderful, but it does seem rudimentary in the most basic sense. Correct?
Yeah.
And so how are you going to take this to the next step? Well, I know you did this as, like you said, as a study. So what does this lead you to in the future? What does this unlock for the everyday user potentially?
Perfect. I see this as a first step. The main goal of this project is I actually come from the discipline of architecture of buildings, not IT. I have 2 graduate degrees in architecture. I thought I was going to be an architect, and architects kind of, are a snobby group of people, and they tend to like to focus on the discipline. Like, what is it that we're doing over time and over history, right? Because, some architecture lasts for millennia, and we have this kind of, it helps inflate our egos, right? But one of the things that I like about architecture, there's a lot of things I don't like about architecture, which is why I didn't become an architect in the end. But after a lot of time and money being spent. So one of the things I like about it is this disciplinary conversation. And so the main intent I can say of releasing unsigned algorithms in this kind of basic rudimentary form is I really want to push the conversation on NFTs into what I feel is a slightly different space, right? Like, here's the example I give. I'm not like really, even though I'm half Japanese, I'm not into anime and cartoons. And so like not to throw shade at all. I really love the creativity and everything that's going on in the space. It's just not my bag, right? Like I'm not into that. And that's
you mean you're not a stereotype?
Oh, dang. Ryan, will you marry me, Ryan?
What a concept. Well, I can't. I'm already taken. I'm sorry.
Me too. My wife would be a little bit angry. I hope she doesn't. Cut that part out, okay?
No, this is staying in. This is great.
Okay. So, where were we? Architecture, something, blah blah blah.
Stacking properties. I don't know.
Properties. Okay. So this is the first step in this putting this conversation out there, because what I'm hoping is even though like I have some kind of creative training through architecture is I kind of sold out and became a programmer when I got exposed to programming in my grad school thing because I had to support a family and everything. But I know there's people who are much smarter and more creative than me. And I view my contribution to this space as kind of twofold. One is there is the collection unsigned algorithms, which I'm releasing, I think, in less than 24 hours online with Patrick's help, right?
Whoa. And
the second part of it is what I really hope people can see is like this is my instantiation of an idea, which is what we've kind of been talking about, right? Is this idea that how do you make art on chain that is like blockchain first, works within the constraints of the medium, has some kind of tension with, with where the place where it's being kind of stored or made, and we can kind of open that conversation up. I'll just say that I view this collection as having a lot more similarities with something like Space Buds, where Alessandro, even though I said like I'm not into cartoons, like technically that was a genius thing that he did. Like no one had done that before. He figured out that we can associate a minting transaction with a token, and if you only make one of them, you kind of have this thing kind of paired together, and that's how you can represent some kind of a asset or even this JPEG on chain, right? So I'll say that he, regardless of your creative taste or your art direction taste, like I really respect and love what he did there, because he pushed us all forward. And not to toot my own horn a little bit, but I view this as another step in Alessandro's direction, right? Of how do we push this forward, and how do we technically innovate and figure out something new in the space. And this is my first attempt at that. I think your original question was like, this seems kind of basic, right? You basic,
rudimentary,
Alex.
Yeah. It feels if we know, yes, you're basic.
So
yeah, anybody who's watched this, I don't think they think you're basic in the slightest. I'm just going to throw that out there.
Yeah, I want to be basic someday. Sometimes I just want to turn my head off. But yeah, I mean, I think there's a version of this that comes out. I'll just say this: if this, in the unlikely event that this sells through, right? I quit my day job. I become a Cardano dev full time, and I get to work in this space. Maintain my pool, do this. There's a few Catalyst proposals I have in about like decentralized insurance, and another one is like a kind of like an AI assisted pool recommendation tool. But this collection represents to me, I think there's enough interesting ideas in here and just enough like visual interest in the pieces that I would be happy personally to like hang these on my wall, either to print them out or, as you suggested before, digital projection onto a space that
some medium.
I think it has some kind of value, and I'm comfortable putting it out there in its current state, with the idea that you're kind of like crowdfunding a storyline a little bit. Right. And I mentioned a little bit, I just did again, Catalyst, right? Catalyst is great. And I do think it will become a powerful force, but it does take kind of a lot of time and effort for right now. The community seems to kind of gravitate towards funding between like $20,000 and $30,000, right? As a level, right? The smaller proposals tend to have a higher chance of getting funded. And there's a kind of large opportunity cost for people in software development to kind of jump off their cushy jobs, right? Like I've worked hard in my life. Yeah.
Alex, here, I'll save this for you. I'll just say it. Catalyst is a fantastic proof of concept, and it is, I have a very strong feeling that it is going to continue to grow. I think it's invaluable, and it's the first of its kind for the blockchain space. That being said, nothing is perfect, and this is the first iteration. And Charles himself has said, this is an experiment. It's a social experiment.
Every day, right? Like things will break, it's messy. And so...
Catalyst is a social experiment. And here's the thing. As a Cardano holder, you at home, if you are watching this, then I would assume that you are an investor in the ADA ecosystem. You know that you're expected to not just be a hodler and just reap your 5.5% APY on your staking rewards. You're expected to participate and be involved. It's incentivized to go vote for these things in Project Catalyst. You get paid money to do that. You get paid money to review them, right? And so right now, we have growing participation in Project Catalyst. However, it's not where it needs to be in relation to how many active wallet addresses we have, or maybe potentially how many active participants we have in the actual community, right? So we haven't, it's the same old adage of voting. Right. So people say we would have a much different potential, at least in the States, we'd have a much different country if the majority of people actually participated in the democratic process, So I think it's the same concept with this. So all that to say, Alex, I completely agree. I think The cost benefit of going through the Catalyst proposal in comparison to how much total funds you could receive just from one proposal, it's tough for some people, especially knowing that you could potentially go another route of venture capitalist funding or private sales and maybe garner more money. Who knows? I don't know. But all that to say, I think you're validated in that, and I won't make you have to say that. I'll say it for you because it's the same thing. We're running into that.
Yeah.
No, you're welcome.
So I mean, the way I view Catalyst right now is kind of as a validator idea, right? You put it out there, you get some interest. And I'm actually, for some of my ideas, I'm showing the buzz that's on Catalyst, and then I'm going to VCs and saying, people seem to be interested in an idea like this. It's a little bit of traction, like $20,000 to $30,000 is not going to, get us to the MVP stage we need to be, but and that's valuable to show that people are actually interested and willing to kind of have some skin in the game and putting this thing forward. So I think in the very, Catalyst is growing like crazy in terms of the funds available to it, right? It will very soon be something that you can be a startup that was funded first on Catalyst, right?
Most certainly. And that's powerful.
I was looking at the Cardano ecosystem and what was going on with all these NFT releases, and I said, is there a way to kind of growth hack and take a shortcut here and do something interesting and contribute to the community and kind of achieve somewhat quasi financial independence that allows me to play in this space and explore, right? Because you're right. I part of the reason for the collection being what it is this is the result of me kind of like ignoring my family for a month or two and putting my marriage into a difficult state. Hi, honey. I'm sorry. But
happy wife, happy life, man. Come on now.
Yeah. This is about as far as I can push it with a 9-to-5 job, a stake pool, other kind of things going on. If I have 4 kids, not that that's anyone else's responsibility other than mine, but right, like this is as far as I could take it. And so releasing it in its current state and how it is in this kind of version is, I feel like it's kind of like a ticket. And I can't imagine when what do you call it? Alonzo launches and we have smart contracts online. I'm kind of imagining, no promises, right? But if this is successful, I kind of want to imagine a smart contract where you would actually send your token to maybe that you purchase here. It gets burned and you get back like a smart contract version of it, where we talked earlier about this is just sheet music, right? Like it's sheet music stored on chain. But I'm imagining that when Alonzo comes out, I'm currently in Plutus Pioneers. I've been ignoring some of the more recent lectures while I was working on this, so I need to play catch up. But I can imagine that when smart contracts come out, you could actually have the execution environment be the Cardano, smart chain. And that to me is super cool because then you don't just have the sheet music, but you also have the symphony on Cardano. And that is kind of beautiful to me.
You have the concert happening in real time on the chain.
Exactly.
But so this leads...
no promises there because I don't have time right now to develop that and do that. So if we're successful, I can, but yeah.
Correct. Well, okay. So this leads me to the next question. And this is going to go a little bit in left field, maybe.
No, I like it.
There is a completely new, and this is in reference to art for all of you at home. Right now, what you do, you're a consumer. You purchase, you get the privilege of owning a piece of artwork. Now it might be generated algorithmically, but at the end of the day, it's static, right? Now there's an entirely new medium of artwork that's being enabled by the blockchain. Now I'm Project MUSE is potentially, this is something that we're building, is potentially facilitating something like this in the audio space. However, Alex, I want to ask you on the spot, with parent and child tokens, right, and concatenation of different tokens within NFT space, do you see your project potentially being able to facilitate live art? And what I mean by that is the total NFT changing based off of people having access to and altering the children tokens, the child tokens, and making that change the parent token in real time?
So I need to give a shout out right here. I should have done it earlier. There's a few guys that I've been kind of banging my head against the wall with in a stake pool called FUPM, which is FU Pay Me. And one of them has a PhD in art. He's a gallery director in Singapore, and the other is they're both I think Canadian, and the other one lives in Tokyo. But these two guys, we've been having some pretty interesting Zoom calls late at night, talking about like what is a programmatic NFT, what are the possibilities. One of them is actually the main author on a paper we'll be putting out in this space, and trying to submit to a conference maybe.
Fantastic.
So look for more there. And if you can include timestamp to this, like they deserve a shout out and some credit. The Jeff and Emil, those two guys.
Yeah,
so
most
exactly
certainly.
What you're talking about is some of the things like I really kind of want to have a compositional NFT, as you were alluding to, where the components are built up of other NFTs, and maybe the owner of an NFT gets a small license fee when their piece is used in someone else's piece. Have you ever seen this thing? Everything is a remix.
No, I haven't.
It's a really good YouTube video. It came out, I think, like 10 years ago or something. It talks about like Quentin Tarantino. All of his shots are frame by frame, almost like references to other movies. But that's not stealing. Oh, wow. That's like it's this in music, right? The idea of a remix, and there's lazy remixes, right? Or maybe Vanilla Ice style, David Bowie kind of thing. But there's also
most certainly
the genius of the remix, right? And recognizing that humans do almost nothing new. We just kind of eat through the universe, interpret it, and re-spit it back out in some other repackaged form, right? Like that's.
We need to timestamp. We need to timestamp that comment right there. There we go. That's gold. That needs to be minted as an NFT. Just going to throw that out there.
So, why I have this kind of screen up here right now is it's a little bit in the weeds. We don't have to get into it, but the way I'm doing this is a little bit kind of like what you just said. The minting transaction for what we can kind of call our Genesis NFT is actually all the code necessary to generate the NFT for the rest of the series, right? And then the rest of the series. So on the left over here, I have number 0000. This NFT actually, if we go back to the website, it produces a black image, right? Like there's nothing there, right? It's just the code to generate images, but it actually doesn't generate anything itself. And I've actually sent an email to Charles saying that I'd be happy to give this to him if he would be willing to auction it off to charity, right? Like he's done that a few times, right? And because this is kind of the cornerstone of the entire collection. I don't know if he'll take me up on that offer.
Well, okay. I just want to say one thing. For those of you at home that wonder, okay, who in the hell is going to spend money for a black square? Mm-hmm. I want to just point this out to you all. Art, first of all, is subjective. We need to go ahead and lay that out, right? Mm-hmm. And so, but also, if you just think about this from a strict standpoint, if somebody were to offer you a 1 by 1 centimeter cut from the canvas of the Mona Lisa, and it was literally just one color, and you would go, why would somebody buy money for this? Well, then you realize that from this little piece, he drew this. Well, okay, now all of a sudden that has much more value and bragging rights, right? So I just want to, for those of you at home that might just scoff at the idea of who's going to buy a freaking black square? Well, it's more than that, right? Because of this black square, he was able to generate the entire collection based off of that with this code, taking different arguments, right?
So the key thing there is I kind of think that what you're buying when you're buying an Unsig, as my wife came up with a name, unsigned algorithm gets a bit of a mouthful every now and then, but is you're really buying a piece of code. And it happens to produce an artifact, which is a PNG image, right? And so what's interesting is on the right-hand side, you can see numbers 1 through the end of the series. These NFTs, they don't have the entire code in them. They have a reference to the minting transaction of this Genesis block, this 0000, which produces a black image, right? And a set of properties that get passed into it. So because that way we're much more space efficient. We don't have to copy and paste the same code 31,119 times.
Is it like a loop plus one? Is it like a loop plus one?
Kind of like that. I mean, again, it goes back to this this thing about the moon and the pointer, right? Like we're basically saying, hey, that guy over there, he's got the code you need to make this. These are the set of arguments that you pass into the code to generate your NFT, right?
Yeah.
So actually, when you think about it that way, the one that is the zero has the most information because it actually has in its minting transaction the ability to produce the entirety of the collection, whereas the rest of them own like almost like a fractional share of the study. This instantiation of with these arguments against that equals this, and so it's kind of like
it's like the key.
Yeah, the entirety of the multiverse is contained in this blackness, right? And it has this nice kind of, I don't know. It's like the Genesis, right? Like God made on the seventh day or rested on the seventh day, but
I can't help it. It might be the wine, but my brain goes to your code.
I'm going to have some wine with you. I made a big
well, so my brain goes to like you can have the Infinity Stones, but unless you have the Gauntlet, they're useless. I'm just throwing that out there. So yeah. That makes perfect sense to me. So here's my question, which I'm sure everybody at home is probably going to wonder. One, where can they go to purchase said NFTs?
Yeah, so
that's the first question.
We have a URL. We bought unsigs.com so that, I always misspell the word algorithm. So I was not thinking that was a good idea to call it unsignedalgorithms.com. So unsigs.com is the site. If you go here, maybe we can do this. We can walk through it. This coming soon button in, I think, 24 hours, 23 hours, it's going to be UTC 0. 23:59 or midnight Friday night in London, basically. I think it's 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time in the States for you guys.
Okay.
This coming soon button over here and up in the upper right will become a buy button, right? And that will turn into what we're doing. The reason I wanted to get Patrick on board is we're not doing this through Google Docs or something, right? Like you're going to click this, you're going to get an address, you're going to send 50 ADA-ish to it, right, with some unique identifier, like this is another method that I owe to Alessandro. To basically, you will get back your NFTs within a couple minutes. The server will mint a random NFT from the entire collection and send it back to you, within a couple minutes. So that's all thanks to Patrick and the hard work that he's been doing to put this up. He was actually, I think it's public. He was involved in helping Hoskinson's release their collection.
Yes, he was.
Time, right? Like people might, give him slack, but he I believe he was contacted and turned that around in like 3 days.
I'm sorry. Anybody that's given Patrick slack just needs to take a chill pill. That's all I'm going to say.
Exactly. So
the guy's doing good work.
So Patrick has done that and also developed the site. There's some fun things here, right? Like a gallery. We'll be releasing some more features. Let me just jump over here quickly.
Now here's the question. So just to reiterate to our users at home, how many of these are there again? 30.
There's 31,119.
Perfect.
And now, so yeah, how is this going to go? Are you asking price? I'll let you ask the question, Ryan. I'm not going to talk.
Hey, you're good. No. So I was going to ask, is there some type of scarcity or is there some type of level of rarity or what's going on with this?
We got to have the Excel chart for the what's rare. What do I know to flip, right?
Listen, let's be honest. Anybody who's buying NFTs right now, they might scream and go, oh yes, I'm supporting Cardano, but there are equal amounts of people going, oh yes, how much can I sell this for and get more ADA? You know what I'm talking about. Yeah,
that's perfect. I think that there's a few ways of looking at rarity in the Unsig space. So the simplest one is that there's this kind of idea of properties, which people are probably familiar with, right, from other NFT releases. Like, does it have a sword? Does it have a fancy background or whatever, right? For us, if you think back to those very simple red, green, blue basic elements, right? We can have up to 6 of those in a single NFT. And the interesting thing is there's I think it's Anna Karenina, that all happy families are alike in their happiness, but all unhappy families are unique in their unhappiness. A professor once explained that to me, that like you can't have a novel about a happy family because it would all be the same. They have a certain amount of money. They have respect for each other. They love each other. Right? Like it'd be a very like if you read one story about a happy family, you've known
copy paste.
If any one piece is missing, you now have an unhappy family, right? Like
it's a fair statement
to a certain extent. And so the interesting part is in the unhappiness in a way. So that's all to say. There's many ways of combining 5 and 4 properties together, right? I can explain why 6 actually tapers off, but there's only one way to have a simple thing, right? So remember we were talking about that black thing or the simple red, the simple green. Those kind of building blocks are extremely rare in our collection, right? Because if there's 31,000 of those, there's 31,119 total things. There's only like, I don't know, 6 or 9 of those core building blocks, right? And we can kind of go through that. There's also this idea of the parameters, right? So different parameters, because of the filters that we apply in terms of no rotational symmetry, no other things, certain red, green, and blue obviously occur equal amounts of times, but the rotations, to get these higher rotations, they're actually rarer than the base 0, because we always start with the 0. And if it exists in a rotated form, we delete the rotated form, not the original. So I'm working with some other people who are better at the statistical analysis kind of thing to take kind of the data that we're inputting. But at a high level, you can kind of see if you want the TLDR version, you want less properties if you want something that's rare. That's the easiest way to think about it, right?
So the less complex the picture, probably the more rare it is.
Yes.
Until you reach a certain point at 6 and above, and then we have a quick deviation.
Yeah. So the thing that happens there is there's basically this idea of a complexity budget in an Unsig, where you have so much like resources to spend in the generation of this thing. And so when you get to 6 properties, you start to use up a lot of your budget. And so a lot of those things aren't allowed in the collection. And so those tend to, what's interesting to me is visually, the 4 and 5s are probably the like, they're much more visually interesting than 1, 2s, and 3s. Right. And so this to me introduces this idea that I've started to call like horizontal scarcity, which is the idea that rather than having a vertical scarcity, which is we're all after the rarest dinosaur, or the rarest, Hawkinson, you know what I mean? Like, and everyone wants that. Why I call it horizontal scarcity is like, I think the scarcity is distributed throughout the collection depending on what you have. And so these are kind of like mid-level rarity NFTs. These are 4 different NFTs, right? But
they look really great together.
Yeah, depending on what you have, you might want a specific thing, right? So if you look here at these white lines that are kind of the borders of each NFT, the color and the lines match up between them. And so what I've done here is I spent 15 minutes doing this, and of course I have access to looking at all of them, right? But I've kind of composed them into a larger composition, right, where they have the same color and the same discontinuities at the same place. And so the idea that I had here is like maybe you actually farm Unsigs and you trade, right, to create a larger composition so that you take something that is of let's say middling value, and through your work and effort to kind of reverse entropy and put something into a larger order of arrangement, you then sell that on as a thing, right?
Just stop. Just stop. Are you telling me right now that in your this just blew my brain in a wonderful way. So you're basically telling me that you're going to take yield farming. For those of you at home, I'm not saying you are, but I'm saying theoretically possible. Mm-hmm. No promises, right? But for those of you at home, yield farming is on Ethereum. It's potentially very lucrative / very risky venture to go about. But basically, where you put something in a wrapped asset and then you get others back, and then you make a new token because you locked up another token for liquidity purposes, right? So you would picture these as being that yield that you would earn for people locking up some token for liquidity purposes, and then being able to turn around and build a composition out of these potentially unique NFTs, right? So that's redundant, but these NFTs. Yeah. And then turn around and turn this seemingly less than lucrative NFT into potentially something that's worth I'm not going to say Beeple level, but let's be real. Like the guy put together 13 years of pictures for $69 million, right? But you could turn something into something very, very lucrative / it has a lot of value, right? So I basically, my brain just went straight to Minecraft for
exactly.
NFTs. Like that's really what it was.
Yeah, this can't, or I'm not imagining this at like the protocol level or the token level, but I do imagine in the Discord or when Patrick releases his trading marketplace online, right? Like this idea of entropy or like randomness, right? Like the way we're distributing these things, everyone is going to go to a different individual. And even if you look at them in sequence, they don't fit together like this because the way we iterate over and create them, it kind of produces a noisy kind of distribution of things. I can pull up an image about that in a second. But what I'm saying is like there is some kind of manual effort or labor involved in composing these things into large. To make a 4x4 arrangement took me maybe 15 minutes of looking. Right? That's wrong. That one's wrong. That one's wrong. Then I gotta the second level of that is I have to acquire that thing. Once I know that that's the one I want, I have to find it out there, right? So the value won't come through a protocol or some kind of automated staking rewards, but in the channel, I can imagine you kind of putting these things together and saying, "Look at what I have done." Imagine
I have a question for you.
Yeah, go for it.
And I don't know if this is possible with the current. Mm-hmm. With our current level of where we are with Cardano right now. But I would imagine, so we mentioned earlier about having a parent NFT that's a derivative of child NFTs, right? But the assumption was that the parent is minted first, and then the child tokens are derived from the parent. But with this concept that you just mentioned, could we have somebody purchase 4 of these and then via a smart contract be able to combine these 4 and create a brand new NFT that still gives ownership credit to the original minting process of those original NFTs? Is that a potential possibility for us?
I've discussed it with Patrick, and my idea was to include some kind of metadata in the transaction for like the minting address or this kind of thing. But I think where I see NFTs going is this idea of like automatic licensing, right? And what I mean by that is like I own it, but I can seek rents on it because unlike a house or a car like that you put on Airbnb or Uber, an NFT can be, kind of the value of it is there's a digital copy of it online that can be used by anyone or by many people simultaneously, right? And so there's no cost to me to rent it out to multiple people. Maybe there's a dilution of value if you see this thing everywhere. In Japan, where I'm living right now, you see the same celebrities advertising like every single product, right? And I always wonder, like, don't you get tired of seeing that? Like, is there any value? Like when we see like Brad Pitt or Matthew McConaughey, like shilling Lincolns, there's some shock value to it, right? Like because we don't see it so often, and it's like what? But yeah, that's a separate thing. So. I do imagine there might be an aspect of either allowing the person to maintain it or paying some license fee to use the likeness of the image or the audio asset. Or it could involve like one version of this could be, no, you burn the NFT and we create now a new larger NFT, which is you've basically locked it into this thing, which is a larger composition and it's taken out of the gene pool. And that's kind of one of the reasons why I wanted to, I was okay with releasing 31,119 is because in the version of events that I hope happens, this is people like this, they buy it and they start to do this kind of stuff with it. And I just view it as like Legos, right? Like if I have more Legos, I'm happier. And by locking it down to 10,000, I think it makes it a little bit more inaccessible. It makes it a little bit harder to find specific pieces that you're looking for. Like I need a black one with 3 dots on it. That's only, one layer, that kind of thing. I don't know. I like.
No, that makes perfect sense. So what you're saying is essentially it's a very equivalent concept of what I meant about using 4 to create a new one, but those 4 still exist. But you're making a distinction of saying, and for those of you at home, if you can create it. So those of you that might have been involved with the token, i.e. Stellar Lumens, they did a token burn once upon a time. to try to increase the value of their token. And what they essentially happens is they cease to exist. So they remove them. They don't exist in the chain anymore. They're essentially locked up to where no one can ever have access to them again. And so, Alex, what I understand you saying is that the distinction made from what I was mentioning is that, okay, great, you want to buy 4 of these. Great, you have bought building blocks. Now you can build something with this and make a brand new creation with these 4, and you'll mint that, and it'll be on the chain, and it'll be a brand new creation. But those 4 that you use to make this original creation will no longer be able to be owned or purchased by anybody else in perpetuity. Is that correct?
Yeah, and that's up to the owner, right? We could release 2 different versions of them. One which is like a composition without destroy, right? We're just saying that guy over there, we're using that one. And the other one, which could conceivably make the underlying new creation more valuable, is I'm using these and I'm consuming them to make something new, and the original doesn't exist anymore. And
for those of you at home,
yeah, go ahead.
No, I won't stop you. Go for it.
No. That I was done. So
okay. Well, what I was going to say, for those of you at home that think this is crazy, I will reference an art gallery in New York where somebody purchased a piece of art, and as soon as the sale went through, the art went through a shredder inside of a box. So, if you think this is a foreign concept, please think again. It is most certainly not. So, okay, I am starting to picture your project as a proof of concept of creating NFT Legos to be a base foundation for brand new art creations. And again, at their core, they're being generated as a brand new medium on chain, as opposed to an off chain creation that's then being minted to the chain itself. Exactly. Is that a decent concatenation of our
Ryan?
gist?
I feel seen. You see me.
I'm just a musician, man. We're good. But no, this
Ryan,
this is fantastic.
Hear me. You hear me, Ryan. I feel heard.
That's amazing. I love this concept. Thank you, Ryan. So no, thank you. I think this is so creative and just a very I just think it's a great new angle at which to look at NFTs. I was having a conversation today with a musician about NFTs, and just talking about people right now in the real, I can say the real world, the Mark Cubans of the world, that claim to have domain expertise over what crypto is. They are literally just spending their time trying to figure out how to repackage something they've already created in the real world and then turn around and sell it again with a new shiny bow on it. They're not worried about creating and using this technology for something new. And so to me, this is, now my knowledge base is limited. Let me ask you this question. Is there any other project that you're aware of on any other chain that is a comparison to what it is that you're creating here in Cardano?
So when I was working on this, I thought I was working on the only and the first, and I had a big, chest puff moment, right? After I've started to put it out there, people have started to send me stuff, and I don't know, I'm almost happier that other people have started to explore this stuff. There's a few on Ethereum, I think like algo glyphs or something like that, where they kind of incorporate some kind of like ASCII art based off of on-chain transaction data, which is something I really want to do. We didn't answer this question that you raised earlier, but I really want to incorporate live on-chain data into the generation of this thing. So like the colors would change depending on like the volume of transactions that are on in the block right now, or the underlying owner's address. So here's a trippy idea. Like, let's say you have an NFT and the world falls in. This is like the Mona Lisa of NFTs, right?
Okay.
But this NFT, when it changes ownership, it changes slightly or drastically. Who knows, right? So you might actually have people paying someone to not sell something. Because like as a mode of cultural preservation, like if this guy sells this thing and he puts his self-interest, like we destroy some of our culture or something, you get what I'm saying?
Wow.
And so
holy cow.
That to me is kind of this notion of like, what is explicitly a distributed ledger? It addresses these ideas of ownership. And so that's the kind of idea that I think art can interrogate and kind of like throw light on, like, what the fuck is ownership, buddy? Like, you know, right? Like that
no,
that's
a fair
is about. And that's what I mean by tension with the medium or playing with stuff. So,
I want to say, well, you mentioned this. You're like, what is art? And truly, I think, like, I just went to a Cockney Van Gogh exhibit here in Houston, and Cockney does iPad art, right? But you look at art and you look at it and you think, you know what, this is for all of humanity to enjoy. But then you also have individuals who, for not to be crass, but they want to have they want to be the big person in the room, and they want to buy it, and then they want to lock it away for the rest of us not to enjoy. And I think that's doing humanity a disservice. And so I think, in reference to what you just said, cultural preservation, we're going to incentivize you not to destroy or alter this current iteration of this piece of art, right? In a weird quasi kind of way, to me, that is almost putting the onus back on the general populace to preserve and claim ownership, even though someone actually does own it. But the general populace is incentivized at that point to protect it, right? So that's a pretty powerful thing.
That really dovetails. If we do move this on chain, where the execution environment is there, there's presumably going to be some kind of, not gas, but transaction fees associated with carrying out the computation. So I can kind of see it as like lawn care, to make it totally banal and boring, right? Like, if the community values these things, or the owner wants to preserve it, like there might actually be an expense or like a maintenance cost to owning an NFT, which to me is an interesting thing, right? Like and the upkeep of it, or the feeding of it and the nurturing of it, right? Because if you want to keep it going, you have to cover that underlying computational cost. So,
all right, everybody, he just alluded to Tamagotchis on the blockchain. That's just what he just alluded to. Keep it alive, everyone.
We'll keep it highbrow. It's dynamic, time-based interpretations of what it means to exist in reality, and aging and death and the ephemeral nature of existence.
There you go. So, right. So anybody that thinks that coders are boring people that don't think about the world, think again. So, okay, Alex, I know we have been pontificating and talking about this project for, I would say, the better part of an hour. I'm sure if you are still sticking around and are watching this, kudos to you. Alex, closing remarks, anything you want the community to know about your project, or any upcoming information or news. I know you mentioned, those of you at home, the sale goes live probably roughly 23 hours from now. And that's going to be at unisigs.com. And that coming soon button is going to change to a buy button. Any other things you want to just let the community know about you or the project, or what you want to do in the future, or anything about any project catalyst proposals that you might just want to bring attention to for a hot minute?
Oh, okay. Yeah. So actually the first thing that I did on Cardano was this map, which I post to Reddit pretty regularly. I don't know if anyone's seen that. But this I think it's a little bit different than most maps. And sometimes people throw up other maps when I post this, and I'm a little bit like, that's nice, but it's not what I'm doing. Just to make it explicit, this is not just the relay locations. I have a layer of that where if you're trying to find a pool, like where's your favorite place?
Italy. I'm an Italophile. Yeah, okay. Most certainly.
If we go over here, maybe I have to turn this on. I think, am I going to fail the live? Oh.
Is there one lone pool in the middle of Italy?
Yeah. Lord. There we go. So it's hard to get the mouse over. I need to change this. So I don't have the right things turned on, but when you mouse over, you should see the pool ticker of the relay that belongs here, or that is here, all this other kind of stuff. So this is kind of the normal mode. I think this is what you usually see in other people's maps, is where are all the relays in the world. But actually the view that I'm more interested in is over here, which this actually shows the density of ADA staked in different places around the world, right? So places that are brighter or yellower, they have, the way I calculate it as, I take, we know the pool that the relay belongs to, how much ADA is in that pool, apportion it to its relays around the world, and then you can kind of figure out where ADA is stacked. And why is that important? Well, ADA, this is a big kind of thing of mine. I think we really do the community a disservice when we focus on the staking rewards of ADA as like what staking is about. Staking is not about rewards. The output is a reward, but staking is actually about securing the network the same way Bitcoin miners mine, right? And so staking represents hash power. And so what I'm trying to do here is to show, are there any like geographic vulnerabilities to the Cardano network where too much ADA is concentrated in too small of a place? If you have this kind of like meteor or some kind of like power outage,
catastrophic event,
right? You could take off 30% of the network or something like that. So there's that. There's also the relay density layer. We also do a little bit more of a regional view rather than the city view. But this is just to say that like, I'm really invested in the Cardano space, and you know, if you like kind of my not elevator pitch, because it's 10 minutes long now, is that like I think I have some kind of interesting ideas. I'd like to work on them more. Right now, I'm doing it in my spare time, and if you're kind of okay with unsigs, but you kind of are interested more in what we were talking about, like one way you can support that is by staking with Monad or by participating in the release of unsigs and kind of like and pushing this forward, because then I will be doing this full time, and I can imagine that it gives me much more financial freedom to. There was a version of this where I wanted to release them all for free, and actually, I would only get money as a secondary sale. So if you flip them, I would get a small percentage of that, right? So then I like that model because I'm only getting value if the community sees value in what I'm doing. Right now, I can't do that because I have mouths to feed. But like, if this works, I now have this totally different model open to me where like it can be much more egalitarian and distributed, and we don't have to worry about little ones going hungry and that kind of stuff. So I'm just trying to say I'm invested in the space. I want to do more. And this is just, I hope, the first of many things to come.
Well, no, I want to say one thing on piggyback on that. For those of you at home trying to find stake pools to stake to, I want to caution you to make sure that you're not. Well, first of all, the staking mechanism, the ranking system in Daedalus is broken. Do not use that as your metric for what a healthy pool is versus what an unhealthy pool is. You need to go to either Pool Tool or Ada Pools and go and search your pool that you want to potentially delegate to. If they have a website, go check out what they're doing. There are many, many stake pool operators who use the rewards from their stake pool to fund projects and fund their research and development for projects that are going to be turned around and directly benefit the Cardano community. So, Alex, don't feel bad for saying, please delegate to your stake pool so I can help do this more than just doing my full-time job. Guys, listen, there are people that have stake pools. I'm not going to throw shade, but all they do is post to social media and they have a saturated pool. They offer nothing else to the community other than a tweet. Let's move beyond that. I think we're better than that. I think we can choose to delegate to stake pools who are actually putting those funds to good use, other than I just don't want to have my day job, right? There's a difference. And so I have no problem saying that. I think it's a real thing. So don't feel bad about that.
For having the cajones to put that out there. It's a little bit difficult sometimes. Yeah.
It is what it is.
One last thing about the project. Recently, my favorite thing to do is just to go to the unsigs.com and just keep hitting random, right? And just like, I don't know.
That's fantastic.
I just like these. And the one idea that we kind of came up with that I like is the nature of these random distributed drops is that you don't really get to pick what you get, right? And so one idea that we kind of came up with to solve this is, let's say I love this piece, and for whatever reason, I want 22896. You hop over here to this Twitter button, you hit tweet, and you'll get this pre-formatted tweet that says, in search of hashtag unsig_number. If you get it, reply below, and then blah, 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 blah. And it has a link back to this thing, right? So my idea here is
if people fantastic.
Participate in this and they look through this thing, right? It's a little bit late now, or 23 hours from the release, but you can kind of like throw it out there that it's like a want to buy classified ad. And then if you ever search for this hashtag of hashtag unsig_ the number of the unsig you're looking for, you might be able to sync up and in a more scalable way than jumping on a Discord and hoping that the owner of the NFT you're looking for is there, right? Like
that's a very real thing.
Kind of do that way. And conversely, I think I don't know if it will be done in time live. When you buy the NFT, you can probably tweet out the inverse of this. I have Unsig, blah 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 blah. Right, that will kind of fall apart over time as people trade and move and don't update this. But at least right now, while we don't have a NFT smart marketplace, this was my kind of like hack on Twitter to allow Twitter to basically be a decentralized marketplace of NFTs. And if you mention me,
I think that's great.
I'm happy to facilitate an escrow transaction because I have a skin in the game to make sure that Unsig users or owners are happy and well protected. So
that is, I think that's a great hack to go around these things. I always think people who are building in the space are very innovative in getting around the fact that we might not have smart contracts on the mainnet yet, right? So I'm just saying, I think that's pretty. Kudos to you, Alex, for doing that. I think that's fantastic, man. Any other things you want to let the listeners know before we hop off here?
Tell if everybody could tell Ryan to consider working with me on whatever the Spotify thing is he's interested in. I'd be super happy to do that. So spam him and get at him and tell him that this can be the start of something else. So
I love it. I love it.
Thank you so much.
No, you're welcome. Everybody, thank you so much for hopping on and watching this. If you've stuck through it, I hope you have gleaned some lovely information about the space, NFTs in general, and kind of where they potentially might be going. They're much larger than just one JPEG that somebody created and decided to throw up on OpenSea. Okay. So please look into this. 23 hours from now, you'll get to go potentially purchase some. And the all important question, we didn't even ask this, is there going to be a standard price to purchase these things?
Yeah. So we are basically dividing this into 3 rounds where the price will always be 50 ADA. But in the first round, for the first 10,000 NFTs that are sold, you'll get 3 for your 50 ADA. Right. So the average price
3
is
for 16, the price of 1.
Yeah. Okay. 3, 16 ADA-ish per one. In the second round, you'll get 2 for your 50 ADA. And in the last round, you'll get 1 for your 50 ADA, right? To help incentivize and reward people who get in early. The other piece of that's not captured in here, but I think it is in the larger text. We talked about how we mint these in order. When you buy in the first round, you're guaranteed to get 1 NFT from the first 10,000, 1 NFT from the middle 10,000, and 1 NFT from the last 10,000. In the second round, you're guaranteed to get 1 from the first half and 1 from the second half. In the last round, you'll get 1 of whatever's remaining. So people who buy in the first round, not only do they get more, but they also get like a higher shot at some of the more limited, fewer property NFTs that exist in the sub 2000 index range, if that makes sense.
I love it. Okay. Well, everybody at home, thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed this content. Like and subscribe to the channel if you have not already. And if you aren't delegating to a stake pool, you can either go to Monadpool or MUSE pool, your choice. I don't care. Just make sure you get your ADA off of an exchange and get it out of a saturated stake pool, please and thank you. All right. Until next time, everybody, I will talk to you later.